Oh, hello there, and welcome back to the Real English Party online book club. It's our Tuesday afternoon book club, and we're here live. We are reading Fairy Tale by Stephen King. Uh, well, I don't know if it's really sad news, but a little update. It looks like this will be the last Tuesday afternoon book club until July. It does appear that the Tuesday book clubs will have to be suspended until July after today because I will be needing to help a former colleague and her school, her English school in Jiugaoka. And to do that, I will have to take basically most of my afternoon and evenings on Tuesdays to assist her until she's able to get some new teachers trained to fill in some spots there. So I don't know. I mean, if you happen to be in Jiugaoka, you can stop by BMC. That's an English school, and you can see me there. But unfortunately, for that month, I will not be able to be here on Tuesdays to host this book club. It looks like the same's going to be for the evening book club. I did have someone who could replace me as the host on the Tuesday afternoon book club, but it seems like all members are more interested in me. So I guess um, we'll just suspend it until July, and then we'll pick up, from there. So what I want to try to do today, since this is an afternoon book club, it's my book club. No one else is joining, and no one is really watching live, as far as I can tell. So this one I have no problem canceling and picking up again on July. But I do want to see if I can possibly finish this chapter today. And of course, we've got 8 pages left. So we're going to try to read a little bit faster than we usually do. And I know we usually read pretty fast. And I won't explain things unless I think they really, really need explaining. Or, of course, if someone is watching live and someone wants to leave a message, put a comment in the chat room with a question, I will certainly backtrack and go back and answer that question. I'll slow down for as long as I need if someone has a question. And of course, if you leave a comment in the future, I will address your question, or of course, I can respond to your comment with another comment that hopefully will answer your question. In the meantime, we do want to just get started on this because I don't want to go further than an hour, and yet I do want to finish this chapter so that in the next event, we will be starting a new chapter, and it will be like a new story, and people will be more welcome to join. And we won't have to do so much catch up because it will be like starting off on a new adventure. Uh, as we know, I think right now we are basically our hero Charlie has been captured by the night. What do they call the night army or the night soldiers, and he's there with other uh, uh, Galliads or distant Galliads, people related to the royal family that has been exiled from the palace. And they are keeping him and they in order to have them compete at some kind of competition, some kind of tournament or battle, but they need 32 of them. They now only have 31. So presently, what they're doing is they're just practicing. So they went into the sort of practice. That's what happened in our last event. And what happened? I guess it turns out that Charlie, of course, is the most athletic among them, so he was able to compete quite handily. There was a bully that he was able to best, and that was a good and gratifying feeling that we got from reading that. And I guess now that part is finished, and we're back into the prison, and hopefully we'll find out what also happened to Radar, Charlie's dog, who was able to escape. Hopefully, we'll find out more about him before this event is through. I don't know because I don't read this in advance. I prefer for you to see with me the challenges of reading, even for a native speaker, that I may not recognize some words or know some phrases. I would like you to experience that with me. I want to demonstrate for you how important it is to just guess the meaning of words if you don't know things when you're reading, because we can still get the overall story. So that's important for you to know. And yeah, so we're jumping into it all together for the first time. Part 3 of the chapter. All right, so I'm just going to start reading. Looks like we've got some long paragraphs here, so I should be able to get through the first few pages pretty quickly for this part. Let me just take a quick swig of my coffee. Okay, now we have part 3. The guards took us to one of the team rooms. It was, by the standards I was used to, large and luxurious. There were electric lights overhead, but apparently they weren't wired to the ramshackle generator and had been replaced by more gas jets. The floors and walls were white tiled and spotless, at least until we tracked our dirt in, plus assorted splotches of blood from the stick fighting. The place was probably kept clean by gray folk, I thought, although none were in evidence now. There was a gutter of running water to piss in, which several of the men did. At either end were porcelain seats with holes in the center. I guessed those were for the women, although neither Jaya nor Eris availed themselves of them. They did strip off their tops as the men did, and without any observable self-consciousness. Jaya had taken several fighting stick blows, and her ribs were blooming with bruises. On one side of the room were wooden cubbies where team members must once have stored their gear. We, of course, had none to stow. On the other side was a long shelf lined with buckets for washing. A rag floated in each. There was no soap. I pulled off my shirt, wincing at various aches and pains, most from the blows of the limber sticks. The worst was at the small of my back. I couldn't see that one, but I could feel the blood now drying and tacky. Several people were already at the buckets, washing their upper bodies, and a few had dropped their drawers to wash the rest. I thought I might skip that part of my ablutions, but it was interesting to note that in Impis, as well as in France, at least according to the ditty, they don't wear underpants. Amit limped toward me. Our guardians hadn't come in with us, which meant there was no one to break it up if he wanted a rematch. That was okay with me. I bent bare-chested and still caked with days of dirt, maybe weeks by then, and balled up my fists. Then an amazing thing happened. I, Frimmy, Stooks, and Hamey stood in front of me in a line, facing Amit. The bow-legged man shook his head and put the heel of his hand to his brow, as though he had a headache. Nah, I didn't believe it, but now I do. Maybe I do. Are you really the... Iota stepped forward and put a hand over Amit's mouth before he could finish. With the other hand, he pointed to a gate that might have supplied heat in the days when the stadium and the city it served had been a going concern. Amit followed his gaze and nodded. With what was obvious pain, he dropped to one knee before me and put his hand on his forehead again. I apologize, Charlie. I opened my mouth to say no problem, but what came out was, I accept gladly. Take your feet, Amit. They were looking at me now, and some of the others, not Iota, not then, had also put their hands to their foreheads. They couldn't all have headaches, so it had to be a salute. They believed something that was completely ridiculous, and yet, wash, Charlie, Gully said. He extended a hand to one of the buckets. For reasons I didn't understand, Eris was duck walking along the half and running her hands along its underside. Go ahead, clean yourself up. Hair too, I said, and when I hesitated, it's all right, they need to see it. So do I. Then he added, I apologize for saying that about feeding you to a mouthful of dirt. I told him no offense had been taken, not bothering to add that I'd heard plenty of trash talk in my life. It wasn't just a sports thing, it was a guy thing. I went to one of the buckets and wrung out the rag floating in it. I washed my face, neck, pits, and belly. I was very aware, excruciatingly so, that I had an audience watching me clean myself. When I'd finished everything I could reach, no way. When I'd finished everything I could reach, Jaya told me to turn around. I did so, and she washed my back. She was gentle around the slash where Aaron had hit me for skinning the cat on the rings, but I still winced. Nah, nah, she said. Her voice was gentle. Be still, Charlie. I need to get the dirt out of the woundy so it don't fester up. When she was done, she pointed at one of the buckets that hadn't been used. Then she brushed at my hair, but only for a second before pulling back, as if she'd touched something hot. I looked at Iota to be positive. He nodded. With no further ado, I grabbed the bucket and dumped it over my head. The water was cold enough to make me gasp, but it felt good. I ran my hands through my hair, getting out a load of old dirt and grit. The water had puddled around my feet, feet was filthy. I finger combed back as much as I could, getting long, I thought. Probably looked like a hippie. They were staring at me, all 30 of them. Some were actually gaping. All were round-eyed. I put the heel of his hand to his forehead and dropped to his knee. The others followed suit. To say I was flabbergasted doesn't cover it. Get up, I said. I'm not who you think I am. Only I wasn't sure that was true. They got to their feet. I came to me and grabbed a hank of hair that had fallen over my ear. He yanked it out. Ouch! And showed me his palm. The lock of hair, even wet, shone bright in the light of the gas jets, almost as bright as Mr. Bowditch's gold pellets. What about my eyes? I asked. What color are my eyes? Iota squinted, going almost nose to nose with me. Still hazel, but they may still be changing. You need to keep them cast down as much as you can. The bastards like that anyway, said Stooks. Love it, added Frimmy. They'll come for us any time, Eris said. Sorry, Prince Charlie, but I have to. Don't call him that, Tom said. Not ever. Do you want to get him killed? Charlie always. Damn, Charlie! I'm sorry, she whispered, and sorry to do this, but I have to. She had collected a lot of black gluck from under the shelf, a mixture of old grease and dirt. Bend to me. You're very tall. Of course I am, I thought. Tall, Caucasian, now blonde, and maybe blue-eyed all too soon. A dashing prince right out of a Disney animated feature. Not that I felt much like dashing anywhere. And the whole thing was absurd. What Disney prince had ever smeared shit on a windshield or blown up a mailbox with a cherry bomb? I bent. Very gently, she ran her fingers through my hair, dirtying it up again, darkening it. But I won't say the feel of her fingers on my palm didn't give me a small frisson. From the way the color bloomed in Eris's cheeks, I wasn't the only one. A fist hammered on the door. On the sight of the soldiers shouting, one of the night soldiers shouted, "Playtime's over. Get out. Hump, hump. Don't make me tell you twice, kiddies." Eris stepped back. She looked up at me, then at Jaya, and Hamie. I think he's all right, Jaya said, low. I hoped I was. I had no desire to visit the Lord High's apartments again, or the torture chamber. If taken there, I would be urged to tell everything, and eventually, I would. Where I came from, to start with, who had helped me on my way, and where they lived, Then, who my fellow prisoners thought I was. What I was. Their fucking savior. Okay, so yeah, we didn't talk about that in our review, but that it is true that it appears that our hero Charlie is transforming slowly into a fairy tale prince. When he came to this world of Impus, he had dark hair and he had brown eyes, and of course he was always tall and he was always young and fit because he was an athlete. But since he's been there, his hair color has started to change, his eye color has started to lighten, probably will turn blue, and he's actually begun to start speaking and at times even thinking in the way that a gallant prince might speak or think. So it does seem that what the author is presenting to us is the fact that Charlie is transforming into a hero character, and it's a hero character that they have been expecting, maybe some prophecy that the true prince would come, and he is this true prince. He's beginning to believe it, although he never wants to say it, because, I mean, what else could explain these transformations, right? So that's where we are now. We could talk about some of the words. There were quite a few challenging words there. It wasn't easy for me to read that part. But since we do want to get through this chapter by the end, and we still have 6 pages to go, let's move right on to part 4. And if you have any comments or any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will respond. Okay, part 4. We return to Deep Malin. The cell door slammed shut and locked at the outstretched arms of the night soldiers. It was a neat trick. I wondered what other ones they had. I wonder what other ones they had. Besides administering electric jolts at will, that was. Hamey was staring at me with big eyes from his side of the cell, as far away from me as he could get. I told him to quit staring at me. It was making me nervous. He said, I apologize, Charlie. You have to do better than that, I said. Promise me you'll try. I promise. And you should try doing a little better at keeping what you think you know to yourself. I told no one what I suspected. I looked over my shoulder and saw Fremy and Stooks side by side, staring at us from their cell, and understood how the word had gotten around. Some stories, as you probably know yourself, are just too good not to pass on. I was still inventorying my various aches and pains when the 4 bolts were drawn. In came Percy with a large slab of cake on a metal plate. Chocolate cake, from the look of it. My stomach cried out. He took it down the corridor to the cell Amit shared with Gully. Amit reached through the bars and pinched off a good-sized hunk. He popped it into his mouth, then said, with obvious regret, give the rest to Charlie. He beat me with the stick, beat me like a red-headed stepchild. Not what he said, what I heard. Something my mother used to say after gin rummy with her friend Hedda. Sometimes Hedda beat her like a red-headed stepchild, sometimes like a rented mule, sometimes a big bass drum. There are phrases you never forget. Percy returned the way he'd come, the cake still on the plate, but with what good-sized chunk gone. Longing eyes followed it. The slice was so big that Percy had to turn the plate sideways to get it between the cell bars. I held it against the plate with my hand to keep it from falling to the floor, then licked off the frosting. My God, it was so good. I can taste it still. I started to take a bite, promising myself I'd give some to Hamey, maybe even a bit to the comedy twins next door, then hesitated. Percy was still standing in front of the cell. When he saw me looking at him, he put the heel of his poor melted hand against his gray face and bent his knee. Okay, all right. So now Percy, of course, is the I guess sort of servant who comes in and serves the food to the prisoners in the cell. He has the gray, right? He's not a member of the royal family. So he has the gray. His face is deformed, but he's giving out cake to the winners of this little practice session, this playtime that they had. Of course, Amit, having been bested by Charlie, took a big piece of cake, but then wanted to give all the rest of it to Charlie, who had bested him. And of course, it seems that when Percy brings the cake to Charlie, Percy, even though Charlie's hair has now been coated with some kind of black dirt, so it doesn't look blonde, even so, when Amit looks at him, Amit can definitely tell this is the true prince. And that's why he bent his knee. And if you don't understand that phrase, to bend the knee or to bend one's knee, what that basically means is to kneel, right? To kneel down on one knee. In order to do that, you must bend the other knee, right? To kneel down on one knee is sort of like a gesture of respect before royalty, right? So he's basically it's almost like a deep bow that he's making to this royalty that's before him. So we see in this part now even the servants are beginning to believe that he is the true prince. On to number 5. Yes, part 5. I slept and dreamed of Radar. She was trotting along Kingdom Road toward the supply shed where we'd spent the night before entering the city. Every now and then, she stopped and looked for me, whining. Once she almost turned around to go back, but then went on. Good dog, I thought. Get safe if you can. The moons broke through the clouds. The wolves began to howl, right on cue. Radar stopped trotting and broke into a run. The howls got louder, closer. In the dream, I could see low shadows slinking to either side of Kingdom Road. The shadows had red eyes. This is where the dream turns into a nightmare, I thought, and told myself to wake up. I didn't want to see a pack of wolves, 2 packs, one on each side, burst from the streets and alleys of the destroyed suburbs and attack my friend. The dream thinned. I could hear Hamey groaning. Fremy and Stooks were murmuring together in the next cell. Before I could get all the way back to reality, a wonderful thing happened. A cloud, darker than the night, rolled toward Radar. When it flew across the racing moons, the cloud turned to lace. It was the monarchs. They had no business flying at night. They should have been roosting. But that's dreams for you. The cloud reached my dog and hovered a few feet above her as she ran. Some actually fluttered down onto her neck, back, and newly powerful haunches, their wings slowly opening and closing. The wolves stopped howling, and I woke up. Hamey was crouched over, the waist hole in the corner, the rags of his pants puddled around his feet. He was clutching his belly. Shut it, can't you? I called from his side of the corridor. Some are trying to sleep. You shut it, I called back, low. I went to Hamey. How bad is it? Nah, not bad. His sweaty face said differently. Suddenly, there was an explosive fart and a plop. Ah, gods, better. That's better. The stink was atrocious, but I grabbed his arm so he wouldn't fall over while he yanked up what remained of his breeches. Oh my, who died? Fremy asked. I think Hamey's asshole finally fell out, Stooks added. Cease, I said, both of you. There's nothing funny about sickness. They shut up immediately. Stooks started to put his palm to his forehead. Nah, I said. You pick up the lingua franca fast when you're jailed. Don't do that, not ever. I helped Hamey back to his pallet. His face was haggard and pale. The thought of him hiding anyone in a so-called fair one, even Dami with his weak lungs, was ridiculous. No, wrong word. Horrible. Like asking a parakeet to fight a Rottweiler. Food don't take to me. Told you. I used to be strong. worked 12 hours a day in the Brookie sawmill, sometimes 14, and never begged an extra rest period. Then, I don't know what happened. Mushrooms? Nah, probably not. Swallowed a bad bug, most likely. Now food don't take to me. I wasn't bad at first. Now it is. Do you know what I hope? I shook my head. Hope there's a fair one and I make it that far. Then I can die outside and not because my belly busts while I'm trying to take a shit in this rotten fucking cell. Did you get sick in here? I thought he must have. Poisonous mushrooms either would have killed him quick or would have gotten better eventually. And Deep Maline wasn't exactly an antiseptic environment. But Hamey shook his head. I think on the road from the Citadel, after the gray came, sometimes I think the gray would have been better. How long ago was that? He shook his head. Don't know. Years? Sometimes I think I can feel that bug buzzing around down there. He rubbed his flabby belly. Buzzing around, eating me, a little at a time, taking it slow. He armed sweat from his face. There were only 5 when they brought me, and Jaka was here. He pointed down in the corridor toward the cell Jaka shared with Burned. Jaka and me made 7. The number goes up. Someone dies and it goes down, but it always goes up again. Now it's 31. Bolt was here before me. He might be the longest who's still alive. And he said back then, Lightkiller wanted 64. More contests that way. More blood and brains on the grass. Kellen must have been him. Convinced him he'd never get that many whole ones. So it's to be 32. I says, if there's no 32 soon, Lightkiller will bring the Red Molly instead of saving her for the end. This I knew, and although I'd never seen Red Molly, I dreaded her because I had seen her ma. But there was something I didn't know. I leaned close to Hamey. Eldon is Flightkiller. So they call him. Does he have another name? Is he Gog Magog? That was when I discovered the great distance, the chasm, the abyss between fairy tale magic like sundials that turn back time and the supernatural, because something heard. The gas jets, which had been guttering along as usual and casting only the dimmest light, suddenly shot up in bright blue arrows that turned Deep Maline flashbulb bright. There were cries of fear and surprise from some of the cells. I saw Iota at his barred door, one hand shading his eyes. It only lasted for a second or two, but I felt the stone floor beneath me rise and then thud back. Rock dust sifted down from the ceiling. The walls groaned. It was as if our prison had cried out at the sound of that name. No, not as if. It did cry out. Then it was over. Hamey wrapped one of his thin arms around my neck, almost tight enough to choke off my air. Into my ear he whispered, "Don't ever say that name. Do you want to wake up what sleeps in the dark well?" And that finishes chapter 22. Okay, so basically what has happened? Not much, right? It's basically just, it looks like, as best I can tell, maybe Charlie, it's pretty much confirmed by everyone that Charlie is the prince. He's the true prince. He's finding out a few more stories. Of course, Hamey is getting real sick. He tries to find out when the sickness began. We can say it was a long time ago that Hamey started getting sick, where he can't keep his food down, like he either throws it up or he has diarrhea if he eats. He's hoping that he makes it to this competition, this tournament that they call the fair one, so that when he dies, he can die outside and maybe even fighting, instead of, in the prison cell. And of course, they did talk a little bit about the flight killer, who was actually once known as Ellen. Ellen was his name. Uh, Once, what his name was once. Oh, yeah, Eldon. Eldon was his name when he was, a part of the royal family. But apparently, he's the one who went down the well, and of course, maybe became possessed by some demon when he came up the well. Was then thereafter known as Flight Killer. So he asked if he was the same as Gog Magog, and as soon as he said the word Gog Magog, basically the whole prison lit up. The torches fired up, and it seemed as though the ground began to shake and lift up and slam back down again, almost as if the entire castle, or at least certainly the entire dungeon, was screaming because it heard the name Gog Magog. And he says at the end, no, not as if, but it did scream. So he's saying the room, this whole dungeon actually screamed when it heard the word Gog Magog. And then, of course, Hamie draws him close, and we finish the chapter with him saying, do not say that word again. You might wake up the demon in the bottom of the well. So here we have this demon is still at the bottom of the well, then, somehow possessing the flight killer, but this is still perhaps trapped at the bottom of this well. And that's really getting us to, I guess, the halfway point of the story, where we really have all the plot lines here, right? We know that Charlie wanted to save his dog and has saved his dog. He wants to save the Galleons. The Galleons are the royal family who have been banished, and of oh, sorry, just lost my connection there. Hopefully, I'm back with you. Yeah, but they Galleon family was Charlie needs to escape, and he needs to save. He needs to become this true prince, and he needs to save the Galleons, and he needs to save all the citizens of Impis who have the gray, as well as find his dog again. Oh, and yes, Charlie did have a dream of his dog. A dream I think is probably true. He's probably has some kind of psychic connection with his dog, so he can see what's happening with his dog. But in his dream, he sees that his dog is being chased by wolves, two packs of wolves on either side, but has somehow been saved by a large swarm of monarch butterflies that were flying at night, which doesn't usually happen. And somehow, I'm assuming these monarch butterflies are protecting Radar, his dog. But we don't know. Of course, he wakes up at that time, and we don't know what happens after that. We will find out, I guess, in July, because as I said, this will be the last Tuesday afternoon book club until July. In the month of June, I will be working at BMC, Bilingual Masters Company, and helping them, I guess, to conduct some lessons and train up some new staff. And then in July, I'll be back again to continue the story of Fairy Tale by Stephen King. We will also have the Tuesday evening book club tonight, and that will also be the last one until July. For the same reason, I will be working in Ziyugaoka at that time for the month of June. So, and that will pick up in July as well on Tuesday nights. You're welcome to join that. That's we are getting near to the end of the book. It's still every chapter is just a new story, so it's not like you need to know the beginning or anything like that, you can jump in at any time. So you're welcome to join. You're welcome to join tonight, but just bear in mind it will be the last chance tonight. And then starting next, in this July, we will start the next chapter in that book. The Wednesday night book club, we will continue. I will not be working in Jiugaoka on Wednesdays, so that should be no problem. So we feel free to join us at 8 o'clock on Wednesday nights. I might actually move some things around so that perhaps this book club reading will be on Wednesday afternoon. So stay tuned for that. This Tuesday afternoon book club might become the Wednesday afternoon book club. But first, let me get my bearings at the Jiugaoka and see how that goes, and then see what my Wednesday afternoon will be like in June. And so perhaps we'll be back sooner than expected. And also, I do hope to, in the very near future, start a beginners book club where we will do a much shorter reading, maybe 20 minutes, to read a chapter from a much easier book. And you can use that for your shadowing practice, and you can use that for your listening practice, as well as looking at some new vocabulary. All right. So I might be doing that as well, probably beginning in July, if not sooner. But that's it for now, right? We're going to stop early because we've gotten to a new chapter. So we will begin this chapter in July. Take care for now, and I will see you the month after next. Yeah. All right. And in the meantime, do not hesitate to get out there and join the Real English Party that's out there. We have a Real English Party lunch party on Saturday, this Saturday, in Ebina. Check it out. You know, if you don't register, it doesn't happen. So if you do, I'd love to join you. That will be also one of the last remaining Saturdays that I'll be able to do an event until July for the same reason. I will be spending my Saturdays in Jiugaoka in the month of June. So please join us. And if you can't, then maybe I'll see you online. In the meantime, do take care, and we will see you out there. Bye for now. Peace.